Okay, so we're going to talk about FK chains and how we can make them. This is not us rigging the character yet. This is just still going over kind of higher level or low level technique at this point. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a series of joints. So I'm going to go ahead and do a base. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to drag out a few joints. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and take joint 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And I'm actually going to go ahead and rename them because we do need to get into the process of renaming all of our stuff. We can always do double click on any of our objects in our outliner and rename them. We can also rename them in the channel box as well. If you have a number of objects that are basically the same name, it makes a lot of sense if we actually go modify, search and replace, and we can actually just rename things really quickly. So I'm going to do a search for joint, which all these are named, replace with FK chain example joint underscore. So my naming conventions, let's talk about this for example for a second. Everything in my scenes is named, and I try to name them with names that essentially make sense, because in character rigs, in scenes that you're animating, you can have hundreds, if not thousands, of objects in your outliner. And if you cannot find an object easily and quickly, you're wasting your time, you're wasting money, you're wasting your studio's time, and that is not something you want to do. You do not want to sit there and have to dig through thousands of objects that are all named like P cube 1, P cube 2, P cube 1028. So you really, really do not want to deal with that. So you really want to make sure that you give your stuff names that make sense. With mine, I usually will name my objects based on the body part they're attached to, the character they're a part of, and the number of the joint that they are. So if it's like a spine, I may have spine 1, spine 2, or spine base, spine mid, spine top, something like that. And I always put in JNT if it's a joint. If it's a controller, I would put in CON at the end. And if it's a geometry, I'll put in GEO for geo. And it makes it a lot easier for me to go through and actually understand where stuff is. So I'm going to go and do FK chain example joint, leave it on hierarchy, replace, boom. All of this is renamed. I'm also going to go ahead and do a group with those joints. I want to rename that joint group. Okay. Now we're going to have a number of groups in this example. So let's go ahead and take a look at our project. So I have this joint chain here. I'm going to go ahead and create a circle. Now this circle is going to be my controller. I'm going to go and rotate it 90 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create it, and then I'm going to snap it and duplicate it. So I'm going to do one for each one of these joints. Okay. And then what I want to do is go ahead and grab each one of these controllers, and you'll notice they all have translations and rotations on them. We do not want translations or rotations on our controllers. We want them to be free of really any incoming information. So I'm going to go ahead and grab them. I'm going to go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. Easy peasy. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab the first one. Actually, I'm going to grab all of these. And let's rename them. Search and replace names. And I'm going to type in circle. Make sure you actually do the capitalization. That matters in Maya. And then I'm going to do FK chain example on. Okay. Let's switch it over to selected. Now you notice instead of joint, it says con. That means controller, and hit replace. So it's going to go con 1, con 2, con 3, con 4. Now, depending on which one is the highest ranking, I'm going to go ahead and name that one root for the root controller, because that is going to have control over the rest of the rig. All right. So since this controller is sitting on top of the basically the parent of the other 4 joints, that would make this guy the root. Okay. Does not necessarily have to happen that way. It could be this one. If I basically just took this joint and reparented it to where it now has parentage over all the other ones. So it could happen whichever way. But just for this example, we're just simply showing you how to make an FK chain. So just to kind of unify this a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and put where it says joint 1, I'm going to do underscore root, so I know which joint is the root joint. And then for this controller, it says con 1, I'm going to take that out. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take each one of these controllers and nest them under their respective parent. This one's parent is going to be this controller. This one's parent is going to be this one, and then to this one, and then to the root right here. So I'm going to go and I can middle mouse drag these. Click, middle mouse drag, click, middle mouse drag, click, middle mouse drag. Okay. If you don't want to do it that way, I can also do child parent P, child parent, hit P as in parent, child parent P, and child parent P. Okay. And that gives me the same exact thing right through here. All right. So what that is going to do is that allows me to create an articulating chain. You'll see right here. See how that articulates nicely? That's what I want. They follow their parents, and then they also control their children. Good, healthy relationships. So what I want to do is go ahead and create a link between the controller and the joint. I have a couple of options. I can basically create a constraint from controller to child, and the option for that would be I could do what I need. Let's talk about that. What do I need these controllers to do to the children, to the joints? So the controller needs to be able to rotate and may also need to translate the joint, depending on what it's going to be used for. So I have a constraint that I can use for that. So what I can do is grab the parent and the child. I'm going to go to constrain, and the constraint I can use to do a rotation and a translation is going to be a parent right there. So I can do the same thing here. I'm going to hit G just to redo the tool. Parent, child, parent, child, parent, child. See? Now what happens is then when I rotate, you'll see that it lifts up the entire chain. and articulates it, almost like a finger, or a tail, or a spine. Awesome. Now, with all of my rigs, I include what is referred to as a world con and a placement con. A world con is a top-level controller that controls the overall placement of the entire rig. A placement con is a child of the world con, and it does the same thing. It allows me to move the entire rig. Okay, maybe, well, why do you need two of those? Reason why is because you can do an offset rotation movement of an object. You can have something orbiting another object, which is quite useful. This is very, very common in professional rigs to have a world controller and a placement controller that are parents of your root controller, which would be the next one in line. So I'm going to go ahead and name this FK chain example underscore world underscore con. This one right here. I'm going to name this FK example underscore placement underscore con. Now, I'm not doing spaces, I'm doing underscores. Maya does not like spaces when you name things. It will actually turn it into an underscore. So why not just go ahead and get used to it? All right, I'm going to go and grab both of these controllers. They both have scales on them. Again, of anything. Well, anything except for joints. We do not actually want to scale. We do not want to freeze these, but any meshes, any controllers that we create or move around or whatever before we join it to a system or a rig, we want to freeze it because we do not want these transformations on that rig. Grab both of these, modify, freeze transformations. I'm going to go ahead and grab the root. I'm going to go ahead and grab the parent, hit P. I'm going to grab the placer, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab the world and hit P. So what we have here is two very kind of organized chains here. We have the controller chain all by itself. We have the joint chain, and you'll see that each one of those joints has a constraint on it. Okay, super useful. Now, again, you have to keep organized. So everything has to be named, everything has to be put into its own groups. So I'm going to take those controllers. I'm going to do FK example on group, and that's going to go into its own group. Both of these, I'm going to simplify this and group these together. FK chain example group. Actually, I usually call it char group. So there's one single, in the outlier, it's one single group that basically has everything inside of it. And then those have two separate groups inside of that contain all the controllers and all the joints. Now, I don't have a mesh in here. I don't have any mesh at all. If I had a mesh, I would have that in its own mesh group. So for example, if I did a cylinder and just did it 90 degrees, and let's do just to kind of complete this whole exercise, I'm going to go ahead and make it about the length of the joint chain, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a decent amount of subdivisions to go with. I'm going to also go ahead and freeze transformations, delete by type history, not all by type, but just delete by type. And that's going to be my new geo. FK chain example geo. So that geometry is going to be in its own group. video group. And of course, that's going to go under the char group. So now we have the three main groups that we're going to use. Now, this is not joined to the joints. It's not joined to the controllers. If I move the controller here, you'll see it does not actually do anything. Kind of the point of this is that I want to be able to bend this tube for whatever reason. Again, it could be a finger, it could be a tongue, it could be a tail, it could be a spine, whatever. So what I can do is go under bind skin, under skin, and then I can tell it to go ahead and bind. Now default, this is all going to be fine. It's using joint hierarchy, all this yada, yada, yada. But the bind skin is going to bind it to the joints, okay? So I'm going to click bind skin. And see that when I grab, let's just grab each one of these. Now when I rotate, you'll see it ends up articulating and deforming that object. There you go. So that is a completed, what I would consider to be a completed rig, what my standards would be. It has everything named, everything has had their transformations frozen, they've been organized properly, they're sitting in their proper groups. They have constrained properly from joints to controllers. Joints have been skin bound to their to the respective joints. Our meshes have been skin bound to their joints. So this would be a completion of a very, very, very basic rig. There could be weight painting done to make the deformation of the mesh better. And we will talk about that in a future video. You'll take a look and you'll see actually going in and doing skin or weight painting. And it'll just make this look a whole lot nicer once it actually deforms. So that's it. Next video you'll see is me actually setting up a real character and working on that for the assignment. All right. If you have any questions, let me know.